Good evening, friends. Welcome to worship. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. To our friends from Community Protestant Church, to Pastor Alex, to all of our friends at home, we welcome you into this service of shadows, this tenebrae service where gradually the sanctuary will become dark. We will extinguish candles as we go into that darkness with Christ, seeking to give over all the things that we mourn and grieve, that they might go with Christ to the cross, so that they might be redeemed, so that we might know the joy of Easter on the other side. Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." So friends, be assured that even as we go into the darkness of death and the cross with Jesus, we know we are not alone. God is with us. In such times when it seems like God has abandoned us, look and listen. God is there. God is here, shocking us with the power of the resurrection of hope itself. We just need to keep the faith and hold on to hope that Sunday is coming. Please prepare your hearts for worship during the playing of the prelude.
Some days are just lousy, and that doesn't even begin to cover it. The first recorded use of Good Friday was in the South English Legendary, a text from the year 1290. Calling a day good was a way to denote a time of holy observance. What if even our lousiest days could be experienced as holy observance of the reality that this is life? Perhaps the good news in the midst of devastation is that God is buried with us in our deepest pain, wrapping us, holding us until we can move through that birth canal once again into renewed life. I invite you to stand and sing our call to worship, Good Enough. Let us pray together. Holy One, trusted guide of our ancestors, at times we feel forsaken. You took us from the womb and laid us in the safety of loving arms, and yet life has thrown us again and again into the loss of connection. Gardens of joy grow silent with grief. Be with us this night as we mourn what cannot be. Amen. Our opening hymn is number 226, O Sacred Head Now Wounded.
Surround
Please be seated. Perhaps you are in that place where grief is what makes the most sense to you right now, because there is something that will now never be. There's an imagined future, something beautiful and dear to your heart, and it has dissolved before your eyes. What is it that you grieve?
Perhaps your grief has a name. She is gone. He will never come back. The funeral is over, but the pain lingers. Perhaps you are grieving an event, an accident, an illness, a messy divorce. Maybe you are mourning a relationship that has come to an end with no possibility for forgiveness or reconciliation. Or perhaps you grieve for a marriage or relationship you still hope for and work for, but one that has painted you into a corner.
Or is it someone close to you? Maybe you mourn for a relative with mental illness, a child who continues to struggle, or the loved one who will never be able to drive, work, or have the relationships that would make life feel full. Or maybe you lost an opportunity to do the right thing, to say what mattered, or perhaps you couldn't say goodbye.
I know that ache. It is a deep sadness that reverberates through our bones. We mourn not in general, but in particular. After all, love is in the details. It is, as Dr. Ron Rosenstein says, the loss of an imagined future. He's a clinical psychiatrist who works in a cancer center. An unexpected form of grief emerged for him when his son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. He had to grieve the loss of who he'd imagined his son to be. He had to give up on the fantasy of a future where he and his son could hit tennis balls back and forth. Of course, his son is lovable and loved. But Don had to mourn his expectations and root around for a new dream of what it means to be the dad of his actual son, not just the son he thought he might have.
Loss requires us to reimagine hope. But before hope comes acknowledgement. Let us count not only our blessings, but our losses. That might sound negative to people who are accustomed to leaning on optimism, but there are good reasons for starting with a deep accounting of loss. Honesty allows us a moment to pause and to take stock before we forge ahead.
Acknowledging this will never be is the precursor to imagining what might happen next. Without it, we may inadvertently find ourselves trapped in what psychologists call identity foreclosure. As psychologist Adam Grant describes, we can get tunnel vision. We commit and recommit to a single vision of the future, shutting down any alternate plans and the ability to adjust. You wanted to be a parent, but infertility made it too difficult. You hoped for a long-term partner by this age. They haven't come along. You were excited to help raise your grandkids, but then they moved away. We are forever being kept from an imagined future. And without honesty, we cannot first mourn that loss.
When you cannot have the future you imagined, let the tears flow. Let yourself mourn. Pour out your grief in all its truth with all your form comes. With words, or songs, or talking with friends, or talking long walks, or screaming into the void. Let it out.
Tell God the whole of it. Sure. No. Especially the honest, angry parts. Anger is our soul's sentry, put there to protect our boundaries and the vulnerabilities we carry.
For everything there's a season and a time for every matter under heaven. There is a time to mourn. Let it take up as much space as it needs. And while we listen to this anthem.